Hello, and welcome to episode 82 of 10,000 Stitches podcast, a weekly chit-chat all about the joys of knitting. My name is Andy, and thanks for joining me again this week. I know that there's going to be a little bit of background noise because I am currently doing laundry, and my washer and dryer is actually just on the other side of this wall. It's like in a little closet right behind this wall, and the washer just finished its final spin, but the dryer is still running, so sorry about that. But yeah, I am currently recording on, I don't even know what day it is. What day is it today? Today is Sunday, December 10th, and this episode will go up on Tuesday, December 11th. If you were looking for me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Purlbug, P-U-R-L-B-U-G. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. If you're looking for links to anything that I mentioned this week, if you are watching via the embedded video on the blog or the Ravelry thread, everything will be linked right below the video. If you are watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the description box to the blog post, and you can go there and find all the links right below the video. I always forget to mention this, but on YouTube there is also a link to the Ravelry group in the description box if you want to go find that. Yeah, so hopefully it's going to be a little bit shorter episode this week. We'll do kind of the normal stuff, finished objects, works in progress, stuff like that. But because I recorded last week and it's only been a week since I recorded last, I actually have less to show. So hopefully I won't ramble on quite so much today. Plus I'm on a little bit of a time schedule. So I mentioned this last week. I am doing Vlogmas this month, and so if you're not watching those, you totally should. I have a playlist on YouTube of all my Vlogmas videos. I will also link them on Ravelry and the blog post. I'll link the playlist. But today I've been talking in my vlog about how it is a day of adulting, and so I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done. So I have an hour scheduled in for podcasting. So yeah, hopefully I can get it all done in an hour, which means we should get going. Luckily, I don't have any finished objects to show this week, so let's move right into works in progress, of which I have 4. So there's that. Let's start with the one that I want to spend probably the least amount of time on, or well, let's start with the one I just picked up. So this one is my my Advent socks. I'm not going to go too much into these because I've been talking about them every single day on Vlogmas. I just wanted to kind of check in with you guys and show you how far they are. So I actually am only halfway through yesterday's yarn, so I'm a little bit behind, although I suspect I will get them finished up today. But yeah, they're all tangled up. This is how they're looking. I have today's stripe, and that is the last stripe to do on the leg, and then tomorrow I will start putting in the heels. So I'll put one heel in tomorrow, one heel in the next day, and then I'll go back to the concurrent stripes. But yeah, this is how they look. Very nice and scrappy. I'm very excited about them. And if you're curious about any of these yarns that I'm using in here, I know I said this last year that I was going to link to all the yarns for my Advent socks, and then I just never did it. This year I am linking to them on Ravelry as I go along. So I've been linking in the project page for these, the sort of original projects that used each of these yarns in case you want to check it out. But otherwise it's just a normal vanilla sock for me. I'm knitting them on US 0, so that's a 2mm needle, 72 stitches. Pretty basic sock for me. So that's why there's not really much to talk about, but yeah, I thought I'd check in with them. I'm really loving how they're looking so far, and it's just been a lot of fun to see some of these yarns that I knit socks with way back in 2016, to kind of see them again and be able to work with them again. So that's been really, really fun, and that's those. So that's first work in progress. My second work in progress, I guess, is another one that I'm not going to talk about too much, and that is my dotted rays. So as a reminder, this is a pattern by Stephen West, and it's just this giant crescent shawl that's worked mostly in garter stitch, has all these little eyelets on it, and it kind of, again, looks the same as the last time you guys saw it because now it's so big that the growth is somewhat imperceptible, but I have started into the second ball, so that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys, is sort of my fade area where I was like switching between the 2 balls of yarn. And so let's see if I can show you this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Oh yeah, you can just sort of see it in the light right now. So I have this little lobster clasp here. That was marking the first row where I started alternating skeins, and then this tail actually marks where I stopped alternating skeins. So basically between here, I'm trying to think of a good way to show this. Basically it's this sort of area here, right? So this is sort of where the fade happened. And I think it looks pretty good. I mean, obviously if you're switching between two different colors or two different sort of saturations of the same color, there's going to be a change, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be different. But I think it's a pretty good blend, and I don't think there's like any stark lines in there when I sort of at the edges. So I'm pretty pleased with it. I did mention this on one of my Vlogmas episodes the other day, but I am actually getting towards the end of where the pattern, like of what's written in the pattern in terms of how many wedges you're supposed to work. And like I said, I just started the second ball and I was assuming this would be a 3 skein project. So I am just going to keep going. I'll just keep adding wedges sort of in the established pattern until I'm happy with the amount of yarn that I've used up for it. And I'm not really worried about it getting gigantic because, like I said, I'm using smaller needles for this. I'm using a US 4, which is a 3.5mm needle, as opposed to a US 6, which is what the pattern calls for. So, you know, it's going to be big, but I don't think mine's gonna necessarily be any bigger than maybe what one would be made according to the pattern. So yeah, pretty pleased with it. It's very mindless knitting, but it's to the point where I can't sit and work on it for too long at a time because it's so heavy now. I mean, it's like working on a sweater where it's so heavy that it gets to wear on my wrists really bad. But I am making progress and I am still sort of planning to have it done by the end of the year. I think I will be able to do that, especially because like my Advent socks don't take a lot of time every day. And some of these other projects that I'm working on are not huge time investments either. So that's my dotted rays. And then let's talk about the next oldest work in progress. This is something that I've really only gotten to this past week. I don't think I had started at all when I recorded last week. And that is the laptop case for Wesley. So as a reminder, this is based off of a pattern for a jumbo giant blanket called the Aspens. And you know what, I won't bother showing you the pattern. I'll put a picture on screen of what the blanket looks like. So it's this huge blanket that's supposed to be knit with like bulky weight yarn held double, and I am not doing that obviously. But basically what I did was I took the pattern and I cast on the full number of stitches called for in the pattern. And so instead of holding bulky weight yarn double, I'm holding worsted weight single, and I'm knitting it on US 5s, which are a 3.75mm needle. And it is coming out to be exactly the right width to be able to make Wesley's laptop case. And so this is how far I am right now. I think I'm maybe 2.5 repeats into the pattern. So this is kind of how it looks. It's this really just beautiful, chunky cable, just very squishy, but still surprisingly stretchy. And yeah, I am really loving it. Once I get going on it, the pattern is very easy to memorize. So it's sort of brainless knitting. So this is the knitting I've been working on at work in my free time after I finish the Advent socks each day. And it's really perfect for that because it's not super hard to do. The yarn that I am working this with is, do I have the label in here? I don't have the label in here anymore. It is a 100% acrylic yarn from AC Moore. I think it's Nicole Studio or something. I'll put the name of it down along the side here somewhere. But yeah, it's just 100% acrylic yarn. And for this, it's really great. I've talked about this before when I bought the yarn that, you know, for a project like this, it's not really about the yarn, it's about the finished object. So, and Wesley really likes it. He especially likes that it's sort of tweedy, which you can kind of get a little bit on camera. But yeah, really loving it. And now that I've kind of gotten going on it and gotten some momentum, it's pretty easy, and I'm enjoying working on it. I think before I was just having a hard time kind of getting started. Yeah, that's work in progress number 3. And then work in progress number 4 is really kind of the new thing. And this is something that I've started, I mean, I say new thing, I started it last night. And this is because I kind of have all these projects that are just kind of dragging on and on. Like the dotted rays is really a big project. The Advent socks, by their very nature, are a project that I can't like rush through and finish. This laptop case for Wesley, also kind of a big project because it needs to be big enough to, you know, wrap all the way around his laptop. So I needed something that was a little bit instant gratification, and I've had some yarn in my stash for quite a while. This was sent to me by a viewer, I think last year sometime, and it's from, sorry about that. It's from Minnehaha Fiberworks, and it is a DK weight yarn. You guys won't be able to see the label. It is a DK weight yarn that is naturally hand dyed using logwood, and I just didn't know what to do with it, right? Because I don't do a lot with DK weight yarn, and you know, it was only one skein, and so I didn't know what to do with it. And it's also a very rustic sort of yarn, so that kind of ruled out making like a shawl or something with it, because I don't think I'd want to have it next to my neck. But it's the most beautiful color, and like I really wanted to use it. This is the color. It's this really sort of pale lavender gray color, and I just really loved it. So last night, last night, I decided to ball it up and start a hat with it. And I sort of teased this on my Vlogmas episode, which would have gone live today. And I originally started making a hat called First Snow, which I totally recommend. Like, there's nothing wrong with the pattern, but it wasn't working up in this yarn quite the way I wanted to. I do think I will come back to it and make that pattern again, but I think for that pattern, I would need to go up a needle size. The pattern calls for US 10, which is a 6mm needle, which is what I started this with, but I think I would need to have like an 11 or a 13, and I just don't have those. So I kind of ripped back to in the ribbing, and I decided to change direction, and I'm still making a hat, but I changed course, and now I am making the Copycat CC beanie or hat or whatever. And I think it's really great. You know, this yarn, because it's very rustic, has great stitch definition, and I'm holding it double right now. And like I said, I'm knitting this on a US 10. And otherwise, I am following the Copycat CC pattern. The only thing I didn't do is I did not do the folded brim, because I already had the brim done, you know, and I didn't want to rip all the way back. But otherwise, I am really liking it. It's definitely going to be a big, thick, slouchy beanie. I can kind of put it on my head, but I mean, it's not a super tight hat, which is okay for me, because you know, having short hair, I don't want a hat that's super tight. I don't want something that's going to squish all my hair down flat. So I'm really pleased with it. I might wind up getting a like faux fur pom-pom to go on it, because I think that one of those like sort of brown faux fur pom-poms with like the little black tips on it, I don't know the right way to say that, but I think that would be amazing with this color yarn. But otherwise, I'm really happy with it, and you know, it's knitting up pretty quick because it's on decently large needles with, you know, very bulky yarn. And yeah, it's sort of scratching the itch that I had for a instant gratification project, and also I've just been wanting another hat lately. You know, I have the one hat that I wear a lot, which is my slouchy candle flame hat or whatever it's called, that I made. I don't think I made that last year. I made it the year before, and I really love it, and it's one of my favorite things that I've ever knit, but I would love to have the opportunity for some variety. So that's kind of where this comes in. And yeah, that is it for the works in progress. Those actually went faster than I thought, because I guess because there's not that much new, and I've already talked a lot about all of them in the past. In terms of what's coming up next, I mentioned this before, but I really want to get some of my lingering works in progress finished up before the end of the year. So my focus is really going to be, I mean, obviously the Advent socks, but that's just like a little sort of nibble of knitting every day. And then, you know, the dotted rays. And I would really like to have the dotted rays finished up before I go up to see Wesley for Christmas, because then I can put it in the mail and it's out. And I just, you know, by that point it's going to be huge and I won't want to bring it with me. So my goal is to really focus on getting the dotted rays done, well, the hat is going to be finished up probably within the next couple of days. Wesley's laptop case, that I'm okay with bringing up to New Hampshire with me when I go visit him, because I can finish it up there and then just leave it up there, like one way or another. It has to come with me. So that one, you know, like I said, I'm working on it at work when I have free time, but you know, there's not a huge rush on it. So then the only other sort of lingering work in progress, I think, that I have is my Ondine socks, which I haven't shown off in a while, so that's why I decided to grab this. As a reminder, this one is finished, but this is kind of what they look like. So this is this really great pattern that produces these sort of scales on this sock, and obviously one of them is done. The other one, I am apparently not at all far on. I thought I was further than this. I have a toe and like one row after the toe. So that's great. But you know, these were really, really fast. Like the first one went really fast, and it's a pretty simple, easy, popcorny pattern. And I want to have them done. Again, this would be a really nice pattern to have done before I go see Wesley for Christmas, because I think they will make great like slipper socks to wear around, just like when we're hanging out around his place. So yeah, I want to get this done, and it'd be great if I could get it done before I go up to see him. Who knows if that'll actually happen. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that I'm going to focus on once I get the dotted rays finished is my exploration station. I know I've been talking about this for probably months now, but I really want it because I've been wearing shawls a lot more lately, and I would really like a nice big squishy shawl. You know, I've mentioned before that once I'm finished with this dotted rays, I'm probably going to wind up knitting another one for myself, which I will once I decide I'm not sick of the pattern anymore. But I really want to knit the exploration station, and you know, as you guys know, I've had the yarn around for it forever. I even have the needles sitting in the bag with the yarn ready to cast on. But just as a quick reminder, I thought I'd show off the yarn again. Also, looking at it is making me excited to get going with it again, or to actually get going with it. But this is my color palette as a reminder. So, get back here. So these three are all Cascade Heritage Silk, which is an 85 Superwash Merino 15% silk blend. And it was originally in the camel colorway, and I overdyed it for these three colors. And then this is a skein of my basic BFL base, which was 100% Superwash BFL, that I dyed a really dark brown to use as the contrasting color. So yeah, I think I really want it. I want the product. I want to wear it. So that's going to be my focus. And I think that my motivation for getting the dotted rays finished before I go up to New Hampshire is if I can get that finished, then I want to bring this project with me. Normally I wouldn't bring it with me up there. I'm dropping yarn all over the place. Normally I probably wouldn't bring it because, you know, it's a fairly decently sized project and it takes up a lot of room and luggage. But for this trip, I actually am going to be bringing like a proper suitcase with me. So I do have a little bit of room to play with, and I'm going to put it away before I just lose all the yarn everywhere. But yeah, that is a big thing that I really want to get working on, and I'm really going to kind of make a commitment to it. And sort of along thinking about like what's coming up next and stuff, I saw a really interesting post today on Instagram, and I think the guy's handle is The Knitting Monk. If I'm wrong about that, well, I'll put his handle down over here somewhere. I think his handle is The Knitting Monk. And I don't follow him, but every so often I'll see his stuff pop up in the, you know, you might be interested in, and I like his stuff. And he was talking about, you know, sort of slowing down his knitting process, and that he has been making an effort lately to really just, you know, take it slow and really enjoy the process of knitting. And you know, like something about that really resonated with me, and maybe it's because I've been, you know, really focused on trying to pump out these product knits, you know, that are for other people, which, like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to make them. Like, the people that I knit for, I only knit for, like, knit-worthy people, and especially people like Wesley and Wesley's mother, like, they are some of the most knit-worthy people I know, you know, along with, like, my mom and, you know, stuff like that. So I'm happy to knit things for them, but I think, you know, maybe it's because I have too many of these projects kind of going at once, and I just am feeling like I've lost the enjoyment part of it a little bit. And so I think once I kind of wrap all of this stuff up, and I am going to just make a big push and just finish it, right? Like I'm not starting this slow down yet. But I think once I sort of wrap some of this stuff up, I really want to get back into the mode of maybe not necessarily being a process knitter, but just enjoying my knitting a lot more. You know, especially with things like the exploration station and those Undine socks, you know, things that I really enjoy the process of. I want to slow down and take my time with it. And you know what? If that means that I don't pump out very many projects, and if it means that, you know, I go to a bi-weekly podcasting schedule because I don't have enough knitting to talk about, or, you know, whatever, that's fine, right? I'm at this point in my sort of life, in my knitting life right now, where I'm just, life is stressful, life is hard, and my knitting shouldn't stress me out. So yeah, that got a lot longer than I thought it was be. I was just gonna mention this thing and be like, yeah, I'm gonna think about this coming up, and nope. Anyway, let's move on to more sort of cheerful things. Let's talk about the knit along, because I have no dying or anything to talk about. So our current knit along is the Neutrals or Something New knit along. And we have lots of finished objects coming in. Super excited to see that. By the time this episode goes live, you still have, more than 2 weeks left, more than half the month left. So plenty of time to knit some chunky hats or something like that to get some finished objects in. And as a reminder, part of the prize is a pattern of the winner's choice from Marie Amelie Designs. I will link to her Ravelry design page. You should definitely go check her out. Her stuff is just amazing. And then the other part of the prize is this that I showed off last week. It's a super cute Canada project bag, which is not a project bag, but you know what I mean. And then this yarn from Artfill in the colorway H2O, and this is on their Bell base. And a lot of people commented on my last episode and said that this was just amazing, and I totally agree. Like, this is a spectacular skein of yarn, and whoever wins it I think will be very lucky. But yeah, just as a reminder, that's what it looks like. So that's all I got for the knit along. I'm going to do my best to have the themes for next year's knit alongs figured out by the next time I record. For reasons that I'll explain in a little bit, this past week has not been a very productive week for me in any way, so hopefully by next week I will have that done. But that's sort of stuff about the knit along. Question of the week. So my question of the week this week, and again, this will tie into something that I will talk about in just a minute. Let me make sure I have a minute left. Yeah, I got time to record. Okay. So my question of the week this week is, how do you keep your life, schedule, tasks, everything like that? How do you keep things running? We all have a system, some kind of system. It's a matter of whether the system works well or not. But for those of you who do have a system, what is it? How do you do it? And maybe you don't need a system. Maybe, and if you do, that's super great. I'm super jealous. But yeah, like, how do you keep your life together? How do you keep things running smoothly in your life? And the reason that I ask this is because instead of doing a normal chit-chat segment this week, I am going to be showing off my system. I mentioned this on my Vlogmas episode a couple days ago. Basically, so you guys know I am totally in love with Celeste from Yarn to Table. And last week she kind of talked about her bullet journal and showed off her bullet journal a little bit. And she really made an emphasis that, like, she doesn't get into it for the artsy part of it. She really is in it for the keep my life together and keep everything running part of it. And I sort of have like a hybrid bullet journal that is for the very same purpose, right? I'm not creative in it. It is meant purely to keep things running smoothly and make sure that I get my stuff done. So I asked on my Vlogmas episode if people were interested in seeing it, and I got lots of feedback that yes, people were interested in seeing that. So because I've been doing Vlogmas, I don't really have much to talk about for chit chat, so I thought I would take that segment and show you guys my bullet journal. Also, again, you'd know this if you'd been watching the Vlogmas, but this past week, all week, I did not get much sleep at all because they were doing construction outside of my apartment on the street. So I think it was Monday night or Sunday night, overnight, whatever. They were replacing the water main or whatever that went to my apartment or that services my apartment. So, I had gotten advance notice of that, and I knew that like the water was going to be shut off and stuff like that. And it kept me up all night because of course they are right outside my apartment. But then the next couple nights they moved slightly further down the street by maybe, 20 feet, not really far enough away. And they were doing construction on the street overnight every single night, which was really frustrating. So yeah, I got practically no sleep this past week, and the whole week has just sort of been a fog, and that's why it hasn't been very productive. I've just sort of been like, all right, just keep going, just keep moving, and you'll make it to the end. And thankfully I have, and I've had a couple good nights of sleep now, and the clouds are lifting. But yeah, it was not a good week, as you know, if you've ever been like chronically sleep deprived like that. So yeah, I guess that's going to be it for the knitting type stuff, and I'm going to rearrange my camera setup so that I can show you guys my notebook sort of from the top, so that way you can really see what I'm talking about, and I don't have to be like holding it up like this, because I just don't enjoy doing that. I think it'd be better if I can have it sitting on the table. So yeah, if you were only here for the knitting stuff, thank you very much for hanging out with me, and I will see you again next week. Yeah, I'll record next week. I'll see you again next week. Otherwise, let me rearrange my camera setup, and I will be right back to show you guys my bullet journal. All right, welcome to my kitchen table. So I sort of wanted to go over a little bit of the, I guess maybe evolution of finding my system, because that's what I always emphasize to people, is that the format doesn't matter. It's the system that's important, right? Once you figure out a system for organizing your life, you can do it anyway. And that's sort of what these 3 notebooks will show you, is like sort of the system that I've come to for organizing my life. And, you know, I'm going to call this bullet journaling, but it's not really bullet journaling. To me, bullet journaling, and if you have no idea what bullet journaling is, I will link sort of Ryder Carroll, who's sort of the guy that formalized the bullet journal system. I will link his video about it. His version is basically, it's rapid idea capture or something like that. And basically what you're doing is you are capturing to-dos. It's basically a to-do list. And of course, you know, the hashtag Bujo community has taken that and run with it, and a lot of them have turned it into this like creative outlet with like calligraphy and washi tape and all kinds of stuff, which is great, right? If you're an artistic person and you enjoy doing that, by all means you should. However, I think a lot of the utility has gotten lost, and a lot of people get scared away from it because they're not artsy, and you will see that mine are not artsy at all. So I have done sort of the traditional bullet journal style before, which is where, you know, at the top of the page you put the date, and then you just list things that you need to get done underneath that, and you maybe list appointments and stuff like that. I've done that, and it doesn't work well for me. I have found that I really need to have more of like a planner style. I need something that has all the days laid out, because I need to be able to forward plan. I need to be able to, you know, look at a date 2 weeks in the future and write something down. And in sort of the traditional bullet journal style, you just don't have that. People have worked around, have found workarounds for it, but I would rather just have something that has all the days in it, rather than trying to use some weird obscure indexing system. So let's start with sort of the first one, and this is sort of where I started to find my system. So this is Hobonichi Weeks. Again, the format doesn't matter, but the point is that this is a week per page planner, pre-printed, and sort of the way that it is laid out is that it has all the days of the week on one side, and then it has a notes page on the other. And what I really like about this is that it had all the days the same size. I hate planners, personally, you know, for me, that make Saturday and Sunday share space as if I'm not doing important things on the weekend. So I really like that, and I liked having the notes page. This was used purely for me personally. I have a planner at work that's like a normal letter size, sort of like an 8.5 by 11 A4 for those of you who are not in America. It's A4 or letter size, and it has all the days of the week, and that's where I write down just like the things that need to get done each day. You know, so on Monday I'll write that I need to, you know, set up whatever lab, and that's, you know, just for tasks at work, and that gets left at work. So this at the time was only for my personal life. So on the notes page, I would write my personal tasks. I would just write like everything that needed to get done for the week, because in my personal life, there's not a lot of things that need to get done on specific days. And that's something that was important for me to realize, is that I don't have a lot of personal tasks that are date specific. So that worked, you know, kind of realizing that. And then on this side, I actually started doing something that I'm still doing, and I'm really glad I started doing it. And it is like 1 sentence a day journaling. I used to journal a lot when I was little, and I would write, you know, just pages and pages and pages every day. And I kind of got out of that, and it's really daunting to start again, and I just never could keep it up. But what I found is that, you know, these spaces are very small. They're kind of too small to write down like anything significant. Plus, like I said, this was from my personal life. I have very little that's day specific. And what was day specific, I would write in the sort of like the monthly layout. So here I would just write basically one sentence, because that's all I had space for, of the best thing about my day. And it's sort of like gratitude journaling, but I don't like to call it gratitude journaling because that's just a little too woo-woo for me. But, you know, it was just something that I could do typically at the end of the day that would help me to focus on what was the most positive thing about the day. And I've kept doing it since I started using this planner, which was in, when was it? Which was basically July 1st. I have done this every single day since then, which I'm super duper proud of myself for. So this was working, except that it wasn't working, right? Like I realized that I would get lost in tasks. And this is the same problem with the bullet journal sort of as a concept, is that, you know, you can write out 20 things that you want to get done in a day and then only get 2 of them done, because writing down your tasks doesn't help you to realize how much time they're going to take and doesn't manage your time. So I would get really discouraged because I could never finish my to-do list. So I put this aside and I actually busted back out this guy, which is another Hobonichi. This is the English version of the Hobonichi. This is a day per page planner. And I already had it. I bought it at the beginning of the year and then stopped using it. And so I already had it and I was like, let's give this a shot. And the nice thing about this is that it does sort of, it's a day per page. Like I said, this is A6 size, and it sort of has a spot where you can list out the times of the day. And I would, you know, it has a spot for noon. And so then I would write down all the other times of the day along the side here. Let me see if I can hold this up a little bit closer. Okay. So the point being, right, so I would put down all the times of the day, and then I would basically give everything in my day a time in my schedule. And I think this was like the most important thing for me, was realizing that like all of my tasks need to have a time associated with them, right? If I have more things than I want to do for the day, I can't possibly get them done. So that's what I started doing, is I would write down, you know, both the things that had to get done, you know, like my teaching or my, you know, setups or whatever I had to do at work. And then everything else had to fit in around those things. So I would put in tasks around those things. Like, so on this one, I have post office, but I actually gave it a time rather than just a tick box. And that really changed everything for me, is realizing that everything needs to have a time and that tasks need to be scheduled. Like, it was just, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but it did. And I mean, obviously, like some days I would still have things that weren't time specific and didn't necessarily take very much time, and I would write those on the side. But the important thing was that like everything had to have a time. And that was, like I said, game changing for me. So I stopped using this Hobonichi because I didn't like the day per page format. Like, it was weirdly limiting and too much space at the same time, right? You can see there's all this like wasted space here. So I didn't like that very much. Plus I wanted to see more than just 2 days at a time. So at this point I kind of knew what was working for me, and then I set up what is my current bullet journal, I guess. So this is what I'm currently using. This is a Moleskine. I know a lot of people really like the Leuchtturm for bullet journaling. I don't like the Leuchtturm because it's bigger than the Moleskine, right? So the Moleskine is I think it's 8.5 inches tall by 5 inches wide, whereas a Leuchtturm is the same height, but it's 5.8 inches wide. And, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but that is, well, when it's spread out over your desk, that amount of width doubles, right? So now it's 1.5 inches wider than this is, and it's that little bit of extra space that makes things intolerable. So anyway, so this is what I'm currently using, and I will show you guys sort of a general way of how I set it up. So I bought this as a blank notebook, and I went through and I put in every single date for an entire year, and I put the times down the side. So this is basically the same thing that I had in my Hobonichi, except now it's done exactly the way I want it to be. So each page is split in half, like each page is 2 days, which is exactly the amount of space that I need. I have the weekends in a different color, and each space down at the bottom, or each day down at the bottom, has a space for me to do that little like 1-sentence journaling that I've been doing, which again, I've kept up at it. So you can see in like past pages, I have those filled in, and I just fill it in each day. And yeah, I went through and did this for an entire year. It was very tedious, but I'm glad that I did it all at one time, because it would have been just as tedious to do it you know, each day. And at least this way, it's like, I can't change it. The format's already what it is. I have to just go with it, which is really freeing because it means that I don't try and get creative and get, you know, discouraged or anything. It just is what it is. I also have monthly pages in here, which are sort of reminiscent of the regular bullet journal monthly pages. I don't really use them that much. I sort of just use them for like personal things or like trips, stuff like that. I'm sure I could be using them better, but I just haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, so let's show you guys sort of how I use this. Let's see. Yeah, this is fine. So this is what the past 4 days looked like. And you can see it's not creative at all. I guess that's as good as it's gonna get. So you can see, right, everything is scheduled. So there are things that are both like specifically scheduled things, like these 103 labs, those are the astronomy labs that I teach. Those are things that are unavoidable appointments. Whereas, you know, things like this prep for that, you know, that's a task, but it has a time because it needs to occur at some time. And this way I can make sure that everything fits into my day. And tasks that don't have a specific time just kind of go down at the bottom. And again, those, it's like if they don't get done on that day, that's fine. I did not get my Christmas tree set up on Friday. That's fine. I only put things at the bottom if they are non-date and time specific tasks that it's like, yeah, I'd like to get that done. So yeah, this is what I do. And this is as complicated as it gets. I actually started out when I started doing this is actually the page where it switched over. So you can see on this side, I was marking things off with checkboxes. And on this side, I started using a highlighter to highlight things that were done. It doesn't really matter. But the nice thing is that I like to sort of check things off as I go along, because that way I can see sort of my progress through my day. So this is next week. You can see I haven't really filled in much ahead of time. But yeah, so today I'm trying to get through this whole big list of like cleaning stuff, and I've been just highlighting them off as I go along. I suppose I can highlight off the podcast because I'm basically done with that. And then I move on to the next thing. And it makes me feel better if I get to the end of the day and I've highlighted everything, but I have extra time. It's like, well, this is now extra free time because I had scheduled my entire day and I got done early. So that's bonus versus having just an endless task list where you're like, when am I done with this? But yeah, I try not to fill things in too much ahead of time. Some things which are like immovable appointments, I will put in ahead of time. Like this is a doctor's appointment I have tomorrow. But I think that actually might be pretty much it. I write in days that I don't have work or days when library books are due. But otherwise I try to leave it pretty free because I don't want to schedule my days out a week in advance. I want to do that maybe the night before or, you know, the day of, or maybe a day or two before. So yeah, the nice thing about this is that because I have figured out the format that works for me, it's just very freeing and very utilitarian rather than being creative. And this is what I need, right? This is what keeps my life together. This is what makes sure that I get done everything that needs to get done in the day. And that's what works. And I also do keep a couple of like sticky notes for things like my grocery list or just random notes or, you know, whatever. I do try to keep those in here as well because like this obviously doesn't have a lot of space for jotting down just like random things, but it's not really meant for that. It's meant to keep me moving through my day. And then I do, I guess, have, so at the back I did have some extra pages, and those I do use for, I guess, what bullet journalers would call collections. For me, it's just lists, right? So this is things that I want to knit. This is books that I've read. And that's really it. I don't use them very much, but you know, they're there if I need them. But yeah, that's that. And like I said, I think the important thing for like keeping your life together if you are a busy person is figuring out a system that works and just going with it. And maybe just don't overcomplicate things, right? Because it's when you overcomplicate things, that's when it's easy to get frustrated. So I'm hoping that this helped anyone who maybe, you know, is looking into like bullet journaling, but is really intimidated by all the creative stuff with it. It doesn't have to be creative. It can be super basic. I use a Sharpie pen. Like this is the pen that I use for everything because it dries really fast. It doesn't smear when I highlight it, and it doesn't really bleed through the paper. I used to be big into fountain pens, but I just sort of have lost my interest for that. Plus, I really like the Sharpie pen. It writes well, and it's very ubiquitous, so if I lose one, I can go to any store and buy a new one. Easy. And I like to have everything the same color, sort of like Celeste was saying. And then the highlighter that I use is called a mild liner. And these come in a whole bunch of different colors, but the cool thing about them is they're kind of pastel highlighters. So this one is sort of this like very light gray. They also have brown, and they have all sort of the traditional highlighter colors, but they're all pastel. You know, they're more mild, which I really like. And I really like the gray one because it is just very subtle, yet very distinctive. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me. If you made it all the way through this, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.